Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Hope you're having a great day on this Friday. Listen, we're going to record this show on Thursday because Jeff Duncan, who is here with us every single Friday, is actually over at the Zurich Classic. And we're going to talk to him. Of course, as we're recording this, the NFL draft is happening tonight, so we won't be able to give you news on what that first pick was, even though it was an offensive lineman, most likely. But we shall see. But there's a lot to talk about, a lot of news coming out of the Zurich Classic. But without any further ado, let me welcome Jeff back to the Ricky Matthews Show. How you doing, Jeff?
Ricky, I'm doing good. It's a busy week over here in New Orleans. I think we talked about it last week, and we're right in the thick of it right now.
Yeah, listen, I checked the weather this morning. What a gorgeous weekend expected there. My goodness. I bet the course looks like it's in incredible shape. It's a unique tournament. You had the opportunity to watch Drew Brees and our starting quarterback Derek Carr kind of do their thing yesterday. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. But the course looks like it's in great shape.
Yeah, and it looks like we're going to get good luck on the weather. It's hot. It's definitely, I feel like summer has arrived. But that's good. You know, the course should play very fair. And I expect scores to go really low. I know the group that won, the team that won last year's Zurich Classic set a record scoring-wise, including a guy from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, Davis Riley. I think they're going to go even lower this week because there's not a lot of wind. And when this course doesn't have wind, it's pretty easy for these PGA Tour pros to carve it up.
Yeah, that's going to be so interesting. And what makes this one unique is the format. Tell us, remind people about that.
Well, it's the only team format on the PGA Tour, and I think it's a real benefit for the tournament. It's a lot of players enjoy playing that type of format, and gives them a little bit of a break. They can share the burden of trying to win a championship with a teammate, and it's just different. It's unique on the tour, and I think after grinding through most of April, the Heritage and the Masters, of course, it's a nice break for players to come here. The tournament puts on incredible hospitality. The restaurant industry really shows up. So you talk to the players, I mean, this is one of their favorite stops on the tour.
Hey, listen, I just finished watching the entire Full Swing on, I guess, Netflix. And, what you come from that understanding, and you should understand this anyway, just based on the fact they spend so much time together, but the amazing amount of camaraderie among those guys. I mean, it's truly a fraternity, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, these are the best in the world at what they do, and it's something of a fraternity. They only understand what you have to go through at this level. The difference between the top 5 to 10 players in the world and the top 100, around 100 is not very much. And on a given weekend, we see it every weekend, except for, of course, with Scotty Scheffler, the way he's playing right now, dominating. But for the most part, it's such a competitive tour that you've got to bring it. And that's why we're seeing more players now, taking weeks off, targeting tournaments and really working on their scheduling because they know they need to be at their very best and the best condition to be able to compete on this tour these days.
So who are you picking this weekend?
Well, I think it's going to be very competitive. I mean, it's hard to go against Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele. I mean, 2 top 10 players. They came into the tournament as the favorites. They've won before, and I think they're going to be very tough again.
Hey, listen, Jeff, I want to really encourage people to go to NOLA.com and sign up for you guys' newsletter. The Saints newsletter is terrific, and when there's important Pelicans news, it will also be in the newsletter. They can also sign up for other newsletters while they're there. But you guys rotate writing that one. The one that I'm looking at from this morning, you actually wrote. You told me at 1 a.m. this morning. That's what happens when you have a busy day. But it's really good, and so you'll lead off right off the bat with Derek Carr making some important statements about Clint Kubiak and this new offense and what he thinks is going to happen. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it was interesting. We visited with Derek after his round with Drew Brees in the Pro-Am. It's the first time we've talked to Derek since the end of the season, so no one's had a chance to talk to him about all the moves on the offensive staff, some of the moves on the roster. Of course, yesterday's announcement, or earlier this week's announcement, James Hurst retiring. So there's a lot to talk to him about. And if you know Derek Carr, I mean, he's always an optimistic guy. So it didn't surprise me that he was kind of on cloud nine about the new offense they're putting in. It was a little bit surprising. He talked about how different it's going to look. I've always said it's not going to look that different, and he's saying it is going to look different. I asked him how so. He wouldn't go into detail there. I think he wants to keep that kind of on the down low, and maybe it's a surprise, a competitive edge for the team. But we'll see soon enough once we get to training camp, or once we get to mini camp here soon, what it's going to look like. But he was very excited about the offensive system going in place, and also I think more so the attitude of the team. Right now they're in the off-season conditioning program, so everybody's kind of together out on Airline Drive, and he was very excited about how the team's coming together mentally going into the season.
Yeah, it's interesting, the Mickey Loomis press availability. You know how those go. He just starts it and says, "Okay, guys, you know how this is," and y'all start asking questions, and he doesn't really make any opening statement. He usually doesn't say much. He's quite evasive, as you well know. And he won't get specific about any player if asked about specifics about a player. But he did have a sense of hope. Now, I guess he's paid to have hope, but I thought it was, we want to win now. And I guess, what would you expect him to say other than that, right?
Right. I mean, well, that's how Mickey is. Mickey's he's always optimistic. He'll tell you that. He tends to trend glass half full. But he didn't really say anything that surprised me. I've been to so many of those pre-draft press conferences with Mickey Loomis. I could almost hold them for him. I know what he's going to say. I did think he was, pretty honest or candid about the fact that they still have some musts that positions they have to fill going into the draft. That's very unusual. Usually this team has all those things filled going into the draft so they can just take the best player on the board. But he admitted, no, they got still some things to take care of on this roster. And that shows you where they're at as a team. Free agency couldn't address all those needs. Obviously, one of them is tackle. So I thought he was a little more candid than normal in admitting that they've got some work to do.
Hey, listen, they have brought in some help from someone that Saints fans are familiar with to do some talent evaluation. Was that a surprise to you?
A little bit, and yes and no. I mean, I know how close Randy Mueller and Mickey Loomis are. I mean, Randy Mueller hired Mickey Loomis when Randy came in as the general manager in 2000. They had immediate success. It was my first year covering the team, and they won their first playoff game in franchise history. So it's a lot of history between those two, a lot of mutual respect. And Randy's a very respected talent evaluator. So I think it's a very smart move. He's still general manager in the XFL. So I think there was a couple reasons to bring him in. One, fresh set of eyes on draft prospects. Randy thinks outside the box. He's always kind of trusted his own eyes and own judgment. He doesn't necessarily look at what the media is saying or other teams are saying. He's going to make his own evaluation. I've always liked that about him. And then the other thing is, by being in the XFL, I mean, he has experience with the new rules that are being implemented right now in the NFL on kickoffs. And so I know they're tapping into his wisdom and what he's learned from their experience on these new kickoff rules. So I just think it's a smart move all the way around. It never hurts to have, especially someone as respected as Randy Mueller, have them in the building to kind of bounce things off of as you get ready for the draft.
Hey, listen, you and I haven't talked a lot about it. In fact, I don't think we've talked at all about the new kickoff rules, but I'm not surprised they're moving in that direction at all. I mean, I know that they've made some other adjustments along the way, but this is a more radical change that hopefully will keep some guys healthy.
Yeah, I think it works in a lot of ways. I mean, it's going to not only, I think, help players avoid these high-speed collisions that have caused so many injuries, but I think it's going to bring the kickoff return back into the game. I mean, everyone kicks into the end zone now. I think it was less than 25% of kickoffs are returned because the kickers have been so good. So the play was being eliminated. Now you're going to have returns, and there's going to be a lot of strategy. It's going to be different. And Randy's a big proponent of it. He said at first he was a little hesitant about the rule, but he grew to really like it and thinks it's going to be good for the game.
Yeah, it feels odd. It looks odd, but it's something I think we'll get used to quickly because that dimension, as you point out, will be brought back to the game, and that's important. Hey, another thing from the Mickey Loomis thing while we're talking about talent evaluation, it was interesting to hear him talk about analytics, that they've gotten so deep into the analytics. They've gotten so many layers to the analytics that at times he really doesn't know what to make of it.
Yeah, he's not. If you know Mickey, he's not a big analytics guy. So we can talk about that on the other side.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, he's not. He's kind of old school in that regard. But I'm glad they're embracing it.
Yeah, we'll continue our conversation with Jeff Duncan, who's coming to us from the Zurich Classic over in New Orleans. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show. Hope you're having a great day. I have Jeff Duncan from NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune joining us from the Zurich Classic. And when we went to break, we were just talking about talent evaluations and really, usually a significant availability of Mickey Loomis. But as I pointed out, it doesn't say a lot. But if you kind of, parcel it out, there's some things we learned. And one of the things was that, there's tremendous amount of analytics coming from his team. They're finding different ways to cut and slice the data. And the team prods themselves in doing that. But he admitted he's not sure what to make of it. What more do you say about that, Jeff?
Well, I mean, Mickey's old school. He admits that. I mean, they have analytics are sweeping the NFL, of course, around the league. It's been going on for about a decade. And the Saints have always been kind of, I'd say, near the end of the train as far as analytics are concerned. They have one of the smaller analytics departments in the NFL. So while they've embraced it a little bit, they're still behind the rest of the league just because I think Mickey feels like it's a tool that they use in their evaluations of prospects and their own team, but it's not the overriding tool. And he's always felt that way. But the other thing I think he was alluding to that I'm not sure how many people are aware of, but and he mentioned this, the Saints have a brand new draft room they're operating out of. It was part of their off-season renovation of that floor of the building. So they've got a really new high-tech room and it'd be cool to see it. I haven't had a chance to see it, but I've heard about it. But in that room, they're able to use the latest technology. And I think they're still trying to figure out how to use it all. It's kind of like when you get a new car and you got all these buttons in the dashboard and you can't just learn everything at one time. I think that's where the Saints are with this new draft room. And part of that now, for instance, Ricky's, you can call up, like, say, a draft prospect, a linebacker who's playing inside linebacker, and you think maybe he'll one day play outside linebacker. You can call up on the video technology every snap that he's ever played in college as an outside linebacker, every snap he's ever blitzed as a linebacker, every snap he's dropped into coverage on a tight end. It's all specialized, the film work, so it saves so much time. I heard Randy Mueller talking about this the other day. He said something that would normally have taken him 2 to 3 hours to do, he can now do in 10 minutes.
Wow.
Because of the new technology. So I think that's something that the Saints are going to benefit from down the road, and I'm sure they already are.
So, I mean, in the sort of the spirit of Moneyball, it works. The analytical analysis works, and especially when you're talking about professional sports and the ability to do things and what your body of work tells you from a statistical point of view. But like evaluating, to put my CEO hat on a second, like evaluating a company that may be traded on the New York Stock Exchange, the reality is you can look at price and earnings and all the EBITDA and all these things and all these various ratios that you can come out of that. But then you still got to look at the products that they're going to be rolling out in the future. What's their current, leadership team? There's going to be some less analytical things that you got to consider. Character being one of them. So all that weighs together. It's making them smarter. But unfortunately, all the teams are getting smarter as we speak. It's almost like this built-in artificial intelligence that's helping them make their selections, so to speak. And for someone like Mickey, who's been old school, he'll believe it when he sees it, and he'll start using it, I bet, because he's a smart guy.
Yeah, look, I mean, they use analytics, but they have a very tried and true draft philosophy that was brought in by Jeff Ireland, who really runs the draft for the Saints. I mean, the one things I've always respected about Mickey Loomis is he knows his strengths and knows his weaknesses. And when they brought in Jeff Ireland, I mean, Jeff Ireland's one of the best talent evaluators in the sport. And so Jeff really kind of runs the show during the draft. You watch when they go cameras inside the war room, Jeff Ireland's running the draft.
Yeah.
And look, they collaboratively make decisions as an organization. So there's never anybody overruling. I mean, it's all made collaboratively, but he yields to Jeff Ireland on draft day. And I think that's a very wise decision. And it shows just how confident and comfortable in his own skin that Mickey Loomis is.
Listen, it was interesting seeing Carr and Brees together at the Zurich Classic and looking at the photos of them together. It reminds you how short Drew Brees was, relatively speaking. I mean, again, Derek Carr is not the tallest guy in the room, but still you get a sense of how, what we had in Drew Brees is a guy with an incredibly accurate passer who could analyze a defense in a split second and had, just smart as hell about the game. You wrote the book on him. For sure. But it was interesting seeing the two guys together. Yeah,
they said it was the most extensive time they've spent together. They had a phone conversation earlier this year. Derek Carr talked about, I think it was initiated by Derek, where he just wanted to pick Drew Brees' brain about a lot of the stuff in the offense and how things operate. I thought it was very revealing in that regard. But you could see the mutual respect between the two on the golf course. I mean, they're part of a very exclusive fraternity, being NFL starting quarterbacks. And you're right. One of the first things I said to some of my colleagues was, look how much bigger Derek Carr is than Drew Brees. Now, I know Drew's been out of the game for a little while, but it was noticeable. And but, man, they had a great time together. It was really cool seeing that scene. You just don't see two guys like that playing together. So I think it was a really enjoyable experience for both of them.
How's their golf game?
Well, both of them are elite athletes. As you would expect. I mean, they're both terrific golfers. I mean, Derek Carr plays all the time. He's played here multiple times, he told me. He blasts the ball off the tee. And Drew's what you would think, surgical. Very rarely hits a bad shot. Yeah, they're both excellent golfers.
So you wrote a column today, and essentially the column was about pairing the past with the present. It was a good move on the part of the folks who put the Pro-Am together, but anything else you want to point out about your column?
No, the only thing that was interesting was, the news broke about James Hurst retiring. It's kind of surprising, I think, to a lot of people. That happened while they were on the golf course. So I went out and tracked down Derek Carr. I think it was around hole number 4. And just right when he was going up to tee on number 5, I told him, you heard about James Hurst? He didn't even know. Now, he told me that they had conversations. So this has been something James Hurst has been thinking about for a long time, all the way back to the beginning of last season. But I was able to talk to Derek about it, and he had some really nice things to say, and he talked to all of us afterward. So that was kind of a unique situation where you're breaking some news to Derek Carr on the course.
Yeah, it was a little surprising to me. Were you surprised to hear it yourself?
Oh, yeah, I was definitely surprised. But then, as I made some calls around, started to find out like this was something he'd been planning for a while. Matter of fact, he requested, I think, a significant number of family and friends passes to the final game of the season at the Superdome against the Falcons. You remember that game? James Hurst wanted, I think, 30 passes for that game. So obviously that was in regard to he knew this was probably going to be his last game in the NFL all the way back then.
Yeah, that's so interesting. He's been a mainstay for the Saints, though, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, and a great locker room guy. And I think he's probably going to still have a role here in New Orleans, maybe doing some media work or maybe even working with the team. I would be surprised if that's the last we've heard of James Hurst. He's a terrific, I think, locker room guy and a guy that I know the organization values having around the building.
Yeah, that's one of the, I always knew that he was a good guy, but hearing just how much of a leader he was and how much people enjoyed being with him, that's important for a team like this, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, I mean, that's a big void on now. I mean, he was a starting offensive lineman. Now we're talking about James Hurst not coming back, Trevor Penning still up in the air. There's still some concern about the long-term future of Ryan Ramczyk. I mean, the Saints have significant need along the offensive line. I mean, it's not just one offensive lineman. They've got to draft multiple offensive linemen in this draft, as well as I think probably address it in free agency. So that is a critical need for this team. I think it supersedes everything else on the roster right now.
You certainly didn't get anything from Mickey Loomis about Ramczyk that gives you a warm and fuzzy, did you?
No, not at all. I mean, he was, I thought, reading between the lines, knowing Mickey, when he's like that, you can tell there's some concern there. And there should be. I mean, Ryan Ramczyk's knee is a chronic condition. 2 years ago, Ricky, I heard questions from some of my sources wondering if he was going to play again. This was 2 years ago. So I think every year, every game they get out of Ryan Ramczyk going forward is kind of lanyard.
Has anyone ever had a knee replacement or partial knee replacement and continued to play football?
No, not in the NFL. I don't think you could get away with that at that level of need to be able to execute at the highest level like that.
And a chronic condition like you've been talking about on this show, as you pointed out for the last couple of years, when you have a chronic condition like that, it's not like it's static. You have a chronic condition and it's just going to stay that. It's usually deteriorating. And I mean, can you imagine the wear and tear on that knee, knowing that it was having issues before?
Yeah, and look, he's made, he's on his third contract, so he's made tens of millions of dollars. At some point, your family is secure. All you're doing at this point is creating long-term damage to your body. So those are the considerations I'm sure Ryan Ramczyk and his family are going through.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, listen, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend.
All right, Ricky, have a great weekend. We'll talk next week, buddy.
Yeah, enjoy the weather and try to get near an air conditioner every now and then if you can.
Yeah, and I'll get to Jazz Fest next week.
Oh, I know. Ooh, that's the hot. It's going to be hot for sure. For Jeff Duncan from the Zurich Classic, have a great day. And Jeff, we'll see you when we come back. I have a very special guest, Kelly Bennett. That voice, you know her. We'll see you after this break.